What's up, internet? I know it's been a long time since I've posted on this channel, but good news, I'm definitely going to be diving more into it. And I know I've said that before, but a lot of things have changed since I've since posted on here. One of the biggest changes, I think, is that I've dove more into the photography world, just more on the digital aspect of it. I've been shooting a lot of high-end real estate photography over the last year and a half, which has then allowed me to save up for this Sony that I'm shooting on now. I was able to get a new MacBook, which then allows me to have a little bit more of a digital workflow. Because truthfully, before this, I had zero. Doing any sort of editing or rendering or anything like that resulted in full rainbow wheel of death lockdown mode. And it was pretty much impossible to do any sort of digital editing. It just sucked, let's just be quite honest. But a lot of things have changed, like I said. New camera, new MacBook. I actually got some stuff on the walls, so my room actually looks livable. I think another big change and something new that I'm excited to do, instead of doing this roll reveal, I'm thinking about changing it entirely to doing a thing essentially called roll review. And that allows me to then go back and talk about a roll that I've shot instead of doing this first impression, setting up a camera, scanning everything, editing everything. It's an insane amount of work, and I think it's another reason why I just got burned out of the YouTube grind, because I was in way over my head of editing and having to lay everything out sequentially. So I think this whole idea with a roll review is the idea that I've already shot the roll here. I've already kind of looked at the roll here. And I'm gonna just kind of pick out my favorite images from the roll, show you how I edit them with the Epson software, dive into a little bit of photoshopping, which is essentially just removing a ton of dust and scratches, which is the story of my life, and then just showing you the final image. I think that's a lot easier on me. I think it's gonna be a lot easier for me to just bust out way more videos in the long run, because it allows me to then relax a little bit with the editing process and not having to stress myself out. I'm excited to actually do this route instead. Okay, let's dive into it. So I've got Epson now pulled up, and if you've noticed, this is not the first shot of the roll. This is actually number 6. But regardless of all of that, like I said, I'm going to kind of dive into some photos that I liked the most on this roll. And yesterday I did an entire video of this first impression thing. So I've kind of peeked through these. And truthfully, I kind of skipped over this one. I didn't even think this was a winner in a sense. But I did a little bit of color shifting and stuff on the histogram here. It seemed to be kind of blue. A lot of these are getting thrown off by, I think, this reddish hue on the color. The light leak is kind of on these both sides of the border here, which kind of gives everything a red skew. Thankfully, I've kind of been able to pull it back a little bit, but honestly, I think this is a pretty cool shot. You'll see in a second, I took this exact same mountain composition like 3 times because it's right where we were camping next to. It makes sense to take it a few in different conditions, different foregrounds. Definitely was going for more of this out of focus foreground with more of the focused background. I'm a huge sucker for that kind of stuff. So let's get a full res scan of this and bring it up in Photoshop. So I've got it pulled up here in Photoshop, and I kind of blew out the sky a little bit, but I was able to bring it back just a little bit with some curve adjustments here. Another thing I'll do as I'm sitting here, I do this a lot in the digital aspect, so I kind of do it in the film world too, but same thing on the Epson software when I'm playing around with the RGB histogram. I'm still kind of doing that here on Photoshop. This is a lot of tedious work similar to the Epson, where I'm just kind of moving it a little bit, moving it a little bit, moving it a little bit, adjusting it a little bit, seeing what looks good, what doesn't look good. I'm sure there's an easier workflow to it, but truthfully, that just works for me. I don't do a ton of editing on the color side of things anyway, so it shouldn't take that long. The thing that takes the longest, as you hear some crows flying over, is hands down dust, hair, all sorts of little bits all over the negative is seriously the death of me, which is really fitting as the crows are flying over, because this line here is almost always, what did I just do? I think I just magic some. We're going to act like that didn't happen. This orange line is in pretty much every photo that I shoot. I don't really understand why. It's obviously inside of my scanner somewhere, but all these little hairs, little dust, little bits gets cleaned up. And that'll be basically it in the Photoshop world. But here's what it looks like. I'll edit it up. Cool. So we got to see what this looks like finalized. Let's jump back over to the Epson software and find another negative to look at. So I've got the next image pulled up, which is hilariously enough the shot right before the one I just scanned on the roll technically. So this is number 5. Obviously, I was going for some very artsy, out of focus stuff here. Originally pulling up this scan, it was a little bit blue. I guess that's the common occurrence right now with, again, this little light leak stuff shifting everything to red. The Epson software just freaks out and changes everything to super blue. So whenever I pull up the histogram stuff, which I just closed out of, I just shifted a little bit more on the blue midtones and stuff to give a little bit of the green back. The sky is, of course, blown. I don't know what. I just suck sometimes at that. That's okay. Be able to bring it back. Not a huge deal. But again, just playing with the histogram here in the Epson software. I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it again on every one of these videos. I try to do as much color correction as I can inside the Epson software. I just hate sitting in Photoshop. There's something about that just annoys me. But I'm actually really digging this. I think it's cool. It's super sharp. So I'm going to click the red X, and I'm going to click scan. I'm going to show you what it looks like in Photoshop. Got it all pulled up here in Photoshop to give you kind of an idea of what it looks like full res. Like I was saying, super sharp photo. That's at 200%. I honestly don't remember what DPI I was scanning at. It's been so long. I think I was at 2400, but on these, I think I'm at 16. I can always up that a little bit. But let's be honest, these are mostly going on Instagram. It should be going on someone's wall, but that's another story for another time. Per usual, yellow line through the middle of the shot. Story of my life. A little bit of dust specks here and there, but honestly not that bad of a photo in terms of crap on my negative. Can't tell if that's a weed or a hair. Again, that should be a game show. More dust over here in the border and stuff, but overall, really cool photo. I am really digging these two so far. So let's see what this one looks like. I'll edit it up, and then let's get back to the Epson to find another negative. Got Epson all pulled up here, and as you know, colors are just so out of whack on these, but after tweaking around with them for a while, I was able to get it down to essentially a very moody, did I say moody? Yeah, it's going to be a very moody shot. So let's get these blues out of here. Again, bringing back the reds because, again, light leak. But playing around with the reds, though, is going to allow me to get it a little bit less harsh on the borders. Bringing it down, that's way too much. Way too much. Too red. The Epson software has never been a fun grind to learn over the last, I feel like, decade of me playing around with this thing. So I need to dive into some other motives, and truthfully, I think next video or a few videos after this one, I'm going to try some alternate scanning methods, aka actually using this mirrorless camera as my scanner. But for now, we're playing around with the good old trusty flatbed. Sweet. I think this is actually looking really cool. I love the moodiness. I love the contrast. Again, me very selective on the focus. These bushes, this little tree is in focus here. This is actually up by Mount Bierstadt, which is what they call a 14er. Which, another one of my videos, I hiked to Mount Princeton, which was another 14er. 14,000 foot mountain hanging out in the background. Pretty cool shot overall. All right, let's get this queued up in Photoshop. Oh yeah, red X first. All right, here we go. Got it all pulled up here in Photoshop. I had my own sound effects to it. But again, dusty per usual, but overall a really sick shot. I think what I'm going to end up doing on this is really making it contrasty and hiding the kind of orange over here on the sides. But again, really cool shot. Kind of selective focus up here in the foreground, leading line into the 14,000 foot mountain hanging out in the background. I'm digging it. Cool. Let's see what the final shot looks like. Back in the Epson world, got the next negative pulled up, and it's hilariously just one right before the last shot. But the lighting conditions were moving so fast, I was just trying to hustle and bustle. This is the same mountain, just a different composition of it. It's on the other side of the trees. The shot before it was over here on the left. And again, this is what it looks like straight pulled up. Just crazy blue. So literally the first thing I'm doing is just busting the midtones a little bit normal so they don't look as blue. Playing around with the reds and stuff again. I know I sound like such a broken record with this light leak, but I'm able to kind of hide it, so I'm not really even mad about it. a lot of the highlights and shadows in this, I kind of keep it flat. The reason for that is I can bring back a lot of this detail in Photoshop whenever I get back to it in terms of exposure. Color correction, like I said before, as always, I try to do it here, but exposure and stuff, not a big deal. I can play around with a little bit more in the Photoshop world. But again, if I bring down those highlights, it kind of hides the color shift over here on the borders. Sweet. I'm actually really digging this too. Let's get full res. So here's Photoshop pulled up on the final negative of this roll. Dirty, per usual. But again, clean shot. I'm actually really stoked about this. Other than a little bit of fun stuff up here in the sky, I'm really digging this depth of field bokeh up here in the front. A lot of cleaning up to do over here in the borders. A fat scratch or dust or something up here. But again, just put on some music, get in the zone, go into the editing zone, world, whatever you want to do. Yeah, I'm excited about these. Since I have all the negatives already pulled up in Photoshop, I would give you a kind of full slideshow of all of the negatives that I've scanned thus far on this roll. I think this is going to be it for this episode anyway. 4 is pretty good for me. Honestly, this roll has a lot more, but I'm going to keep this for a rainy day whenever I get really bored and want to go back to film rolls and scan more stuff, because I do that a lot actually. Regardless of all that, here's the first negative that I scanned. Got the low angle, a little bit of dust. Let's just ignore that. Again, sky's a little bit blown out, but I'm going to go back and kind of pull that. Here's the second shot with the out of focus mountain in the background. Again, very artsy, but I liked having that. Just a little bit of, I don't know, something different, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's also extremely sharp, which I'm stoked about. Third shot is this very moody above the tree line. Well, I guess we're at the tree line because there's trees in the shot. We have Mount Bierstadt in the background, 14,000 foot mountain. It's very color skewed right now, but I think I'm going to be able to pull it all back, play around with some adjustments, get some curves, get the RGB and all that kind of jazz going. And then the final shot, again, the exact same composition, just, well, on the other side of the trees. But again, low angle, trying to get some depth of field. I think there was a path or a road or something, so sometimes I'll try to block that to make it look like I'm really out in the wilderness, but really I just parked the car over here to the left. But regardless of all that, I'm pretty stoked. Well, I hope you like this first actual episode of Roll Review, which is just going to take over the Roll Review thing to make my life so much easier with the editing world. I'm so hyped to actually get back into this editing video world. Having a new camera, a new laptop is really, really going to make my life so much easier. Honestly, though, if you made it this far, I got some of these stickers made up. I don't know if you would be interested in it. If you are, I guess shoot me a message on Instagram and I might be able to send you some. All right, until next time, peace.